Hello, and welcome to episode 17 of Pinball in the Machine. This is where we talk about our blind stumblings through what might loosely be termed spiritual awakening. So if your life is seeming a bit odd or you're hitting the wall, this might give you a different point of view. Each week, Tom and I meet to discuss our progress or otherwise, and this is from those conversations. So grab a coffee, sit in, as we attempt to describe the indescribable. I'm Greg, and I'm here with my dear friend Tom. Hi, Tom. How's it going?
Hi, Greg. Nice to see you. Yeah, it's been another week, but I'm doing all right, thank you.
Good. Yeah, it's been only a week.
Only a week. So this week, I'd say that one area that seems to come up again and again, so I'm listening to it, has been about vibrations, or whatever we want to call it. So it started out randomly, looking at these groundskeepers, or molemen as they call them in the north of England, who are able to sense the moles under the ground and grab them or dig them out. And they do it on golf courses and football pitches, and and it's sort of like they were taught by their granddad how to do it, and they can only sense it with a certain hand. And then it got me thinking about a mutual friend of ours who's moved to New Zealand now, who was a dog whisperer, and he used to do this trick. He used to do this trick at the county shows where he would say to the audience, "Someone give me their dog," and it didn't matter if it was the worst behaved dog you'd ever come across. He would take it, and within 5 minutes, it's herding these little ducks around the course, it made me think. These individuals are absolutely fascinating to me. Their ability, they've obviously got, and there must be something to do with the vibration, the vibe, as it were. I don't know, and I've got that going on in my house at the moment, where I'm conscious of we've got a challenge that's going on, where I know that the kind of the vibe that I meet the family with is going to be so important to help us all. And some days you wake up and you've got the vibe, but other days you wake up and you just don't feel it's there. And it's how you then get into it, because you need to, that I'm kind of looking at. So yeah.
Well, that should keep you out of trouble, or in trouble.
I think the latter. Yeah.
Yeah, the latter.
Yeah. How about you? How was your week?
Well, it's been a week, and the last time we were talking about synchronicity and serendipity. Okay. And so this last week has been one seronicity after another, as far as I'm concerned. It's way beyond the point where I can dismiss the alignment. Okay, it's awesome, because a lot of the time I would think, well, it's a coincidence, or it's me making it up, or something like that. But actually, it's almost like, well, it's not almost like, the fact is I cannot mistake it. I know. And I knew absolutely yesterday what was happening. I'll get onto that a bit later, maybe. So when we were talking about sacred geometry, I think it was podcast 15, the guy who presented this program, Dr. Robert Gilbert, teamed up with his mentor, Dr. Ibrahim Karim, and he's an Egyptian doctor, Egyptologist, whatever. But they came up with a thing called biogeometry, which is nature's own design magic. And what he said was, what he was saying aligns with the pendulum that I bought. Do you remember that? It was the pendulum, the round pendulum, not pendulum, necklace. What do you call it? Pendant. That's what I'm thinking of, pendant. And so the pendant to me became the portal. Okay, but when he describes the way they're using the sacred geometry, which is the circle with the dot in the middle, that's the first sign, which is the divine, if you like. It completely not only aligned with what I was thinking about this pendant, but if you were able to look around the edge of this pendant, it actually looks a lot like the diagram he was presenting.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there thinking, and when I saw this pendant being advertised, I was very interested in it, but I didn't need it. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to have it. And then it just wouldn't leave me alone. I kept looking, and I had it in my basket once and took it out, that sort of thing. And then I thought, nope, I'm going to have it. And it was absolutely right. So these things are happening more and more now, and it's getting to be very pleasurable, I have to say.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So here we are. And last time, there was a piece from last week. There was a question that you had, and we never got to it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sure. Let's start with that then. Thank you. So this came about just out of conversations I was having with a friend. We were talking about the past. We've got a shared past, and I came to a particular story or set of circumstances in which I described it was basically I witnessed some truly awful behavior by some individuals on somebody that I love dearly, and right. Behavior that of a scale and magnitude and egregiousness that I never even come close to in my life, and hopefully never will again. But anyway, it was when we started talking and I realized that I still actually held quite a lot of fairly basic anger against these individuals for what they'd done to somebody that I loved. Right. And I thought to myself, but surely, Tom, if you're here trying to, transcend the ego, reach this new place, isn't this something that I need to address? Am I allowed to have anger? Should I still have anger? And I didn't know the answer, so I thought I'd ask you.
Oh, good. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, no pressure here. Well, as you're talking, I guess what comes to my mind is distinctions. One of the things I like about the Brits is that they do distinctions, not so much as they used to, but they still do them a lot. The Yanks tend not to have so many. So, for instance, if you're in America and you're on the road driving and you pass someone, you have to tell the person which direction you're going in because they use it for both ways. Whereas in Britain, they make the distinction that you pass in the opposite direction and you overtake in the same direction. So that little distinction helps us understand things much more quickly rather than the vagueness of, oh, I passed him on the road, which way was he going? So I think in this situation, you have anger and, okay, so that comes back to distinction. Anger, so anger is an emotion and anger is a feeling. We say, because these two things have been interchanged. But the problem is that if you make the distinction, you see what you're dealing with. So a feeling is a feeling. It's something in the body. An emotion is a feeling with a story attached to it.
Yep.
Okay. And anger is an emotion. Yes. And it's the story.
Okay.
Okay. So anger is a vehicle. It can be used because it's energy, right? So it can really drive you, to greater heights. People say, I'll show them, I'll prove that I'm blah, 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 blah. Well, there's anger and there's your motivation, or it can destroy. It's a little bit like electricity, I guess. So in my life, I'm certainly experiencing fewer incidents of anger. But my question would be, what is the anger here to teach me?
Yes.
And in my experience, personal and professional, depression, for instance, is anger turned inwards. So depressed people, and I was one of them, are actually really angry, but they can't express it.
Yes.
Until it explodes sometimes, which bursts them out of depression, and then they can't maintain it, so they drop back into depression, and they're on this little roller coaster ride throughout their life. So getting back to the story, what's happening is your ego is running it.
Yeah.
It's running the story for you. But back in the day when I was teaching at Regents College, the principal and I would finish on the Saturday. It was a weekend course. We'd finish on the Saturday, and we'd need to get a taxi on Marylebone Road to the hotel. Now, if the weather was inclement, taxis were scarce. We'd just written or co-written a book. And so we'd stand in Marylebone Road in the pouring rain looking at each other saying, don't they know who we are? And funnily enough, as soon as we laughed, a taxi would arrive. So thinking about people like Ram Dass, for instance, he would say, let whatever it is be whatever it is. Let everything be what everything is, which is very glib and hard to do, as we've said before. But what happened yesterday is when I journeyed on this, because I remembered, we hadn't done that question. I thought, okay, so, think about anger. And I journeyed on this, and I can't, that's where let everything be what everything is. And then they kind of showed me the deal. And it was as soon as you come to any situation, you start to make presuppositions. So, for instance, you have a situation that you described that, all right, let's take something a bit more clear. You have a situation that you look at and you think, if I helped these people or this thing, it would improve. Okay, so there's your intention going in. But you're supposed to let everything be what everything is. Well, the first thing is you've got to make a judgment, because you've got to decide what the thing is in the first place. So the first thing is you've got to decide there's something wrong with this thing, this situation. So there's your first presupposition. Your second presupposition is that you can actually help. And your third presupposition is that you know what it's supposed to look like.
Yes.
But here's the leverage. That is perfectly done. It'll happen in seconds. We all do it. And the reason I'm saying this is because we tend to beat ourselves up because we're not doing, let everything be what everything is. But you first of all have to identify what you're dealing with. Otherwise, you cannot move in any direction.
Yes.
Nothing happens because you haven't made the judgment call as to whether it's this way or that way or whatever. So that's essential to us, and that's the ego. So we don't want to kill the ego, but what we want to do is once the ego's done its little job, which it'll normally do in seconds, we want to move it to the side and say, fine, now I can accept it.
Yes.
Okay. And this jars people. If you were thinking, Tom, let's suppose you believe that the moon was made of green cheese. And I know for a fact it's made of blue cheese. But I would accept the fact that your belief is that it's made of green cheese. Now, the distinction here is it doesn't mean I have to believe it.
No.
I don't have to agree with it. I simply have to accept that that is your belief. Yeah. Now, once you do that, you're out of the mix. You say.
Yes.
So what you say is, right, this situation was horrific. The behavior was egregious and it was on a scale, unprecedented, and it's affecting someone I love. So you tell the story and you say, okay, fine, but I accept that is what the situation is. What is my next move? You're not in anger anymore. You're the observer.
That's right. And when you say that, as soon as you said about not being able to move out of it, that's immediately I'm there and I'm feeling the emotion. Not because of what happened, but because I'm completely static, because I haven't evaluated it properly, and I probably haven't accepted the situation. As soon as you accept the situation, you become flight of foot.
Yes.
Yeah, you can dance around it. It still doesn't change what happened, and it doesn't even change your analysis of it. But there isn't. Maybe the anger there is more fear that you're sort of stuck in a situation, you're unable to move out of it, this sort of tunnel vision. That's really interesting. I'm going to go and have a little think about that.
So your next distinction there, I would suggest, would be to say, okay, is this within my circle of influence or is it without my circle of influence? If I cannot do anything about what happened, that's redundant. Yeah. It's absolutely redundant. The question is, what do I do now with what is occurring now? So if you're in contact with that person that you love, and you say, okay, well, how can I help this person? What can be done, if anything?
Yes.
So again, you're not in the anger. You're now propelled through your analysis, which is the ego. So it all works. But the thing is, because if we just said, oh, let everything be what everything is, nothing would change. Nothing would change.
Yeah. And that's not transcendence. That's just inaction.
Yes.
Okay.
You must make the judgment call. And then through your acceptance, you step out of the ring. Yeah. You say, that's fine. I get it. That's what that was. Because what the ego says, no, you must keep hammering this. No, I accept it. That's what it was. Okay, I've judged it. I judge it to be that. I can now leave it and see how I want to respond. Now that, as we said last time, is responsibility, the ability to respond.
Like it.
Oh, God.
Super.
So anyway, so yesterday when I was journeying, this came absolutely clear. I mean, it was as clear as a bell. In fact, I haven't made notes about it. It's in my brain. Okay. Now, when my eyes opened immediately after I got this information that I've just imparted to you, I was like miles away. I was in the room, but I wasn't in the room. And I knew, and I said out loud, you just channeled that.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've ever said that. But it was so clear to me. It was almost like, look, Greg, you can't miss this, right? This is what's happening. You are getting information from some other realm, somewhere, somehow. And here it is. And it was right on the money because we were going to cover this today.
And you brought it all back in complete, you brought it back in completeness and clearly in detail, and also undiluted, because as you say, you haven't written it down. It's just straight in there, and it's not a small piece either. No. In fact, it's quite a big piece. It's taken up a big chunk of the podcast. Super. So what do you think? Does that make sense? It does. Well, it also gives me a starting point to explore it. I think that's the other thing as well, is my statement was quite, question was quite succinct, but it was also, as we said earlier, it wasn't a particularly flexible position.
Yeah.
So sometimes with these things, I think you just need a starting point. You need you need to be pushed in a certain direction and said, go and have a look at this. And then I think you can make some progress.
Yeah. When I used to deal with domestic violence, which of course is triggered by anger, and the perpetrator would say, well, I just lost it. You see, I lost it, and then the damage was done. But between the anger and the action, there is a point when the decision is made. And once you say, you know what the situation is, you can feel the anger rise, say, I accept the situation, that gives you a bigger gap in which to make your decision as to whether you take this one way or the other. Yeah. Oh, so it's always the story that gets us. Yeah. And that's the ego. Oh, what they did this to me. Oh. And isn't it great the times that we tell ourselves the story, maybe for years, and then something happens when we realize the story was wrong.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Stephen Covey did a great thing years ago. He was on a tube train in New York City called the Subway. And it was a Sunday morning, about 7:30, he's reading his paper, and there's some guy there with 3 little kids running up and down the carriage, causing hell, and the guy is looking at the floor, apparently taking no notice of the children at all. So eventually Covey collars him and says, look, can you please keep your children under control? I'm trying to read my newspaper. And the guy says, I'm really sorry. Their mom's just died in hospital. And Covey says, oh, I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do? You see, in that moment, his story changed. The situation was exactly the same. The kids were still raising hell. And that's the power of the story. We don't realize how powerful stories are. And that's why words are, you spell a word is a spell. You can cast a spell through words.
Yes.
Been done forever.
Yeah.
So the story will take you and eat your lunch.
I think it's interesting you said it, because we also know that in a lot of horrible real world situations, there is often some kind of positive outcome in the long term.
Yes.
And actually, that's where you can flip the story as well, isn't it? Especially historic stories. Just you actually look at what the positive outcome was.
Yes, or if my higher self was looking at this, what would they tell me? You can flip your position like that. Yeah, my higher self ignores me. He's there, covering his eyes, shaking his head, thinking, "What the hell is this boy thinking?" But anyway.
Well, thank you, Greg. I appreciate that. That's given me a lot to think about.
Well, do you know what? We've kind of run out of time already. We hardly got started with me rabbiting on. I'm sorry.
No problem.
So, I think we're going to have to cover the, I was going to talk about reincarnation because I've been asked about that, talking about other dimensions and beings or whatever you like getting in touch. Well, where are these people? Is it reincarnation? Is it this? So maybe we'll cover that next week.
That sounds great, because I'd love to do that. I've got a few bits I've been thinking about. I've been thinking about old souls a lot as well recently. That sort of crosses into it, doesn't it?
I'll tell you what. I saw a photograph of a young lady. She's only about 8 months old. And as soon as I saw the photograph, I said to her mom, either she's an old soul or I'm a Dutchman. And her mom said, yep, she's she's been around. The
moms can tell, can't they? It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to that, Greg. We'll
we might even show up, huh? Well, that I guess that pretty much brings us to the end of another episode. How quickly did that go? Thank you for listening in. We really appreciate your feedback. And if you enjoyed our meanderings, please rate and review us on whichever platform you happen to be using. We'd really like to hear your thoughts and questions and experiences. If this has had an effect in some way, please let us know, because it'll inspire other people, perhaps. And you can reach us at our website, pinballandthemachine.com, through our Facebook group, which is Guides Not Gurus. You can email us at hello@pinballandthemachine.com. So from myself, Greg, good day. And from my dear friend, Tom.
See you later, guys.
We look forward to joining you next time. But for now, we're down.